Out of curiosity, I decided to record a video of myself sleeping. Having installed the camera in front of the bed before going to bed, I started watching the recording in the morning. I didn't see any monsters, and I also slept calmly and serenely. And then on the recording I saw my mother come up in my bed with a knife in her hands and started waving it over me. I did it for 5 minutes and got the impression that she didn't dare to stab me. I didn't say anything to Mom, and she acted like nothing had happened. Every morning, for the past week, I have been watching a recording where she stands next to the bed every night with a knife in her hand. I dated a girl for 6 months. Everything was fine. She was just perfect. I have never experienced so much love, care and affection with anyone. It was because everything was so wonderfully perfect that my suspicion about her was closed. I started checking her phone and laptop. I didn't find anything interesting or strange in the laptop, and I read the correspondence with her friend on the phone. But what have you decided? Will you leave him or will we kill him? Kill him. I just want him to experience all the good things before he dies, and then I don't care. After reading this correspondence, I did not ask any questions. I packed my things in a hurry and left for my hometown. Oddly enough, she didn't try to contact me. I'm sure she realized that I saw the correspondence. One day I was coming home late from work. It was already night. The deserted street and the quiet weather instilled some anxiety. When I was passing by one high-rise building, I heard screams from an open window on the first floor. I shuddered and stopped. Standing up on my toes, I looked into this window. The bright light made it possible to see a terrible picture. The man dismembered the girl right on the kitchen table, chopping off the limbs with a kitchen hatchet. Don't leave a sound. I reached into my purse for my phone to call the police and was distracted from the window for just a few seconds. Looking out the window again, I cried out in surprise. The man was squatting right on the windowsill, covered in blood and growling. He looked at me, and then smiled and said, "I remember you." I ran home at breakneck speed. And only in my apartment I called the police to the same address. But the police found nothing. There wasn't even a trace of blood. And the owner of the apartment said that he was just watching TV in the kitchen and maybe someone thought that they were actually shouting. I do not know how he managed it and who he is in general, but his words that he remembered me do not give rest. Every night I wake up because I can't move. I know it's called sleep and paralysis. I hear, see, and feel everything, but I can't even move a finger. But they come to me, look at me and smile. And I'm looking at them and I can't make a sound. Every night they stand closer and closer and the smile does not leave their decomposed faces. They reach out to me with their hands, and I can't do anything. My 5-year-old Sam came to me at night and asked to sleep next to me, saying that there was another boy in his room, whom Mom loves more than him. I didn't ask anything, and when he went back to his room, opening the door, I saw my wife lying on the bed with our son. I rushed back into the bedroom and turned on the light. The son who was sleeping next to me was not there. I went back to the nursery and looked at my wife and son. I thought I had dreamed it all, so I went back to bed. But from the next day I don't recognize our child. This is not my son. He behaves differently and talks like an adult about terrible things, and when I am alone with him, he is silent and looks at me from under his brows with a cunning smile. Every night there are 3 loud bangs on the door of my apartment. As long as I didn't come to the door, I didn't see anyone and no one responded. Unable to stand these pranksters, I hung up the camera in the entrance and waited for the morning to view the recording. That night I heard 3 loud bangs again, but I wasn't even going to get up. In the morning, after reviewing the records, I did not see anyone in the entrance. I have already started coming up with various theories for this case, but when I approached the front door, I saw a dent on it from the inside of the apartment. All this time they were knocking on the door from my apartment. But what the hell if I live alone? As a child, I spent every summer with my grandmother in the village. We loved to run to the cornfields, and once again when we ran into the field to play hide-and-seek and figured out each in different directions, I saw a big scarecrow among the corn, crucified on wooden boards. There were a lot of straw scarecrows in rags on the field, and I didn't pay attention to him. I lay low and tried not to move, so that I would not be discovered before everyone else. When I heard a woolly crunch behind me, I thought that the guys were running in my direction. And turning to the sound, I saw the scarecrow standing on the ground and looking in my direction with his straw face. I rushed to run with fear and shout to the whole field, "Help!" The guys didn't believe my story, and when I brought them to that place, there were only old boards without a nailed scarecrow. From that moment on, I never wanted to go to the fields again. And in the same summer, a boy from the village was found murdered and nailed to those very boards. I have a friend. We have been together since childhood. That's just she's very angry and hates people. And I've had to kill 3 people for her already. I can't do anything about it, because I owe her. She drowned because of me, and I didn't tell anyone, because I was threatened with punishment. Because of my cowardice, more than one death now lies on me, but as soon as I see my dead friend and kill anyone, she points a finger at me. I do not know who will be next. One day I woke up at night from a phone call. When I saw my wife's number on the screen, I was surprised, because looking at the other side of the bed, I saw that she was lying next to me, facing the wall, and I saw her phone on the bedside table next to the bed. I took the call and held the phone to my ear. At first there was only some interference and noise, and then I heard my wife's voice, which almost whispered and amplified. "Let me go." The call ended, and I turned to my wife, or rather to what was left of her after death, and said, "I will never let go." I feel worse and worse every day. I had apathy, I didn't want to do anything, I didn't even want to live. I lost a lot of weight and looked like a walking skeleton. The doctors threw up their hands, I was absolutely healthy. When I was particularly ill for a few days, I suffered from thirst and often began to wake up at night. And when once again I opened my eyes again and wanted to get up, I saw an incomprehensible and at the same time terrible picture. My cat, who has lived with me for 13 years, was lying on my chest breathing, or rather inhaling air from my slightly open mouth. I felt like I was suffocating and I didn't have the strength to push her to myself. I tried to turn on my side and it was hard for me to do it. The cat jumped off the bed and ran out of the room, and I still couldn't catch my breath. I have heard many similar stories when cats can both treat and vice versa. It turns out that my cat sucked the life out of me, no matter how strange it may sound, but I haven't seen her since the next day. Probably found a new owner. Even now I don't tell my friends about it, I'm afraid of being misunderstood. I was 9 years old and I was lying in bed. I didn't want to sleep, but I was ordered to. I looked at the ceiling and saw the headlights of passing cars on it. So hour after hour passed. There was no sleep. The TV was on behind the wall. Then he stopped, too. Silence. It was hot. The bed was soaked with sweat. The car has not become. And he heard a dull drumming from afar. Slow, measured. It was getting closer and getting louder. It could no longer be confused with a beating heart. Connected to it. I do not know how to describe this sound. A quiet groan from dozens of frail women. Synchronous changing modulation. I can't even find the words to describe it. I remember then I was not scared of a strange situation. I like this dull and powerful sound itself, and its synchronicity. The way he fit perfectly into the drumbeat. There was no pain or threat, grief or joy in the moan itself. It was like a drum beat. A lifeless instrument. The source of the sound ran. I remember I wasn't scared, just curious if I got off the bed on all fours and raised my head on the windowsill to see the street. In the dark, illuminated only by the flashing color of yellow traffic lights, people were walking. I saw silhouettes of men and women. They walked as usual, as if they had gone for a walk in the afternoon. There was an oddity. They strictly observed the order of the formation. Several people were at a distance of about a meter. I did not see their faces from the window. There were a lot of people. The caterpillar stretched over the entire area. I saw her head disappear into the darkness of Lennon Street, but I never saw her tail. The mother woke up in the next room. She ran up to me standing by the window, grabbed me and threw me to the floor, covering my mouth. That's when I got scared. She lay whispering, hugging me, while the drums flowed outside the window. We couldn't sleep that night. In the morning she went to her friend's neighbor. She came back a few hours later and told me not to tell anyone about what I saw and heard that night. I asked what it was several times, and she got rid of me with the words "you'll grow up to understand," and was very nervous at the same time. The last time I asked her about it, she beat me, even though she had never raised her hand before. Now she pretends that nothing happened. I grew up and still didn't understand anything, but every year it becomes more and more uncomfortable for me to remember that night.